Hey everybody, I'm really excited about today's episode. I talked with my friend Tina Chessher, and we had a really great conversation about how to transition to and build an authentic career rooted in your strengths. Tina shares her learnings from the transition from childcare work to the financial and insurance services industry. We talked about bringing a learning mindset to our work and how Tina approaches new opportunities in work, leveraging her strengths and connecting with people with authenticity. Need advice on how to survive living in a camper with a family of 4 for almost 2 years? We talked about that too. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Tina Chessher. All right, welcome to the Building Thinkers podcast today. I'm so delighted to be joined by my dear friend, Tina Chessher. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think we're going to talk all things finance, some insurance, how to build really an authentic career, and this is going to be lots of fun.
Yes, I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so one of the things that we like to start off with is, what's our connection? How do we know each other?
I remember the very first day that I met you and Jeff, and that was at church. You guys were so eager to be there and meet new people and just get connected in your new community, Wimberley. I just remember like y'all were so friendly and again engaging with me and very open, and I think now we know each other's personalities are a lot like that because I'm very open too. So it was an easy first meeting. What would you say?
Yeah, you were my first Wimberley friend, and I think about that a lot. I said that this year at my birthday
That
party.
is very special.
I was like, thank you for being my first Wimberley friend. I
I'm pretty
also
sure
think
that
you're
made me cry a little bit.
I know. I also think that you are the unofficial mayor of Wimberley because anytime I go
Oh my
anywhere,
gosh.
Tina knows everybody and all of their children and everybody's aunts and uncles. And if I say,
It's
hey, do you
my
know Tina? They're
favorite.
like, of course I know Tina.
It's my favorite thing is to connect with people. And so that just it really does come naturally to me, and I'm grateful that it's one of my strengths and hopefully I use it well.
Oh my goodness, of course. You're like the best includer. And so one of the things that, when I was really thinking about this conversation, and one of the things that I think would be really powerful for our listeners to hear is for you to speak through, and we can kind of get at this different ways, but you had a pretty big career transition in the last couple of years. And I really would love to just dive into that. I know, at this moment in time, in now 2023, lots of people are thinking in different ways. That the events of the last couple of years have had people thinking about what they really want with their work. We hear all these terms, quiet quitting and the great resignation or the great transition.
Yep.
And you have such a beautiful story of how you really thought through that. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about that shift.
For sure. So when we were new to Wimberley, I had originally been a stay-at-home mom. And we found out real quick living where we live is not the cheapest area to live in. So my husband was like, it might be wise if you go and find something. And he also realized too, which is pretty much spot on, that like I am a people person. And even though I love my children dearly, I needed to be out and about and in front of people and in a new town meeting new people. So it just really worked where I was able to be online, saw that there was an opening as a teaching assistant at a Mother's Day Out program. And my son at that time was a very good age prior to school to be able to go with me. And so it all worked out to where I was able to do that and loved that for 5 years. He went to school with me. I was able to make great friends, adults and children alike. And I think that's helped me plug in really well with our community because I still see students here and there. And a lot of them were so young, they barely remember who I am now. With that, there is not really much financial growth. And 2020 found us making a really big life change in the fact that something we had wished on and prayed for forever was being able to find and own some land along with some of our family members and build, for lack of a better word, a family compound. And just each step of the way, I mean, you and Jeff were a huge part of that. And you guys were right in the middle, in the midst of all of that. But along with that was like, oh, that's going to take some money, not just prayer and faith and, hoping on these dreams, but it's going to take some money. So I'm not good with all these timelines, but when it got to be the end of the year in 2021, is that right? Yes.
I
The
don't
end
know.
of the
The
school
last 3
year.
years were like a big blur to me too. So
They are a
just
blur. Well,
whatever
and
the timeline, I'm just gonna nod and smile.
it's 2021 because and it's crazy now that we have to think about like 2020 and then from there. But it was 2021 into the school year, and it just made sense to I was approached by a very good friend who was like, "I think you would be good at this." And I pretty much laughed in her face and was like, "The line of work that you do, A, I don't even know what you do, and B, I never dreamed that I would be anywhere near that." But she is persistent. She believes in me. So we sat down and had a lunch with who is our managing partner now, and just kind of got a little bit of info on the business and how I would work the business and how I would get paid. And I do not tread lightly on decisions like that because I have to feel it in my heart and soul. I need to discuss it with my husband and just really know that if I'm making a big jump, it's I'm not a very risky person. I need to know that it's gonna be right. I like comfort. I like my comfort zone. I like my box. And so I just said, "Well, let me think on this and pray on this." And I was going to a women's retreat with the church that weekend. And wouldn't you know, I felt like my prayers were answered by trickles of rain. That's for another day and another story, but trickles of rain on my head on a very sunny day. And that was that Sunday after that women's retreat. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm jumping in, and I'm gonna try it. I have zero clue. They just let me know that if I was willing to try, I was gonna be under good leadership and I would get some good education, and with my personality and strengths that I have, that I would be a good fit. So here I am, a year and a half later, and I would not say it's come easily. It's definitely been a road of struggles and thinking that you can't teach this old dog new tricks, but you can,
Mhm.
and willing to work around self doubt and lack of confidence sometimes, willing to jump out of my comfort zone on a day to day basis, but still rein in who I am. And again, like I said, use the
Right.
strengths of who I am. Um, it's very interesting making my own schedule. I never thought in a million years that that would be hard, but it kind of is.
Yeah.
And then learning how to juggle the personal and business or career side of being a mom, because anything I've really done since my kids were older has been kind of along the line of their school day and school year. So that's been interesting and something new I've had to work around. But I have a lot of support, and it's been good. I feel good. It's been good to see where I can go and what I'm capable of. And it's also great to have brought along my family on the journey and come up with goals for our family. And we have seen through living in a camper for almost 2 years. We've bought our land. We have built our house. We moved in right after
Mm.
Thanksgiving. And so we've seen a lot of dreams fulfilled while I've been working this business, this new way of life and career.
Don't know if we said up front, but so we're talking about the financial industry with a focus on insurance is
Yes,
the
ma'am.
space that Tina's in.
Yep.
And so one of the things, like when I was thinking about, in my nerdy podcast worksheet that I make everybody fill out, when I was thinking about the title, it just kept coming to me. And sometimes the titles come after the session or whatnot. We talk about different stuff, but this idea of building an authentic career. And so as you think about what you recognize, like we can dive maybe into some of the different things that you've learned, but I want to see if there's any connections for you. What did you recognize about yourself that made this type of work a really authentic fit for who you are, that it might not be for somebody else, right?
Well, just loving people and feeling like, for lack of a better word, I can talk to a wall. As I've been in this position, I have come to realize, Tracy, that that does not come easy for everybody. And so diving into our own personal strengths, and it's been really cool because my managing partner, she does that for us with at annual and quarterly planning. She works strongly with each of our team members strengths and not weaknesses, but our top 5 strengths. We do a Clifton's test and all of that. So it was no surprise to me that my top 5 strengths are woo, winning others over, um, was it connectedness, communication, positivity, and is it emotional? See, I never can remember
I
the
would
5.
think is
Um,
includer not on there for you? I thought
no,
includer would.
it's not.
Oh,
Well, and maybe that's where the connected and, I know 'cause a lot of them can kinda overlap, so maybe where that's where the connectedness is. Um, but just realizing that it is not hard for me to walk into a room of people I do not know and try to win them over or make connections with somebody if I've only met them on, one time. So that definitely helps in this career because there's a lot of moments where you are getting in front of people that you may not know. You may be calling people that you met one time. And so just trying to build relationships with people. And I feel like that's something that I have always enjoyed and I am good at. And so it just makes that pretty seamless with this job that I'm in.
I love it. Okay, now let's talk about some of those things. Let's talk about what you've learned about learning for yourself, if that's not too meta. Like, what have you learned? I know early on in our conversation already, you shared about just self doubt and these different components. And so, what have you learned about learning and growth and what you're really capable of? Walk us through one of those stories.
Well, I have learned that you can teach an old dog new tricks. You can get this old, almost 43-year-old brain back in action. Although a lot of my team members would laugh because I always say that makes my brain hurt. Like, I would much rather be out in front of people and talking and building those relationships than studying for another exam. And they all know that about me. For me, it's just been one day at a time because I have not had to be in that capacity for a very long time. And there have been some struggles, and there have been some times where I feel like I'm pouring in study time and putting in the effort, but then it's just hard for this brain to retain because I am in a business where it just doesn't always come easily to me. But what is cool and what I have learned with this is the knowledge that I have gained is I am in a state of being an educator and educating others on concepts and ideas and certain things that I'm trying to promote within the business and teaching other people who may not have an idea of what I'm talking about, educating them on that. So just the training that I've got has been able to allow me to pour into educating others. And then, of course, they always say you learn better when you teach people. So it's constantly doing that. But there are some struggles and there's been some uphill battles on studying and not passing tests. I'm still working on it. There have been times when it's gotten me down and discouraged, but I pick myself back up and you just try again. And I have to let myself know that my self worth is not found in passing an exam. And I'm very grateful that with this line of business, I can still make money, maybe not as much money, but I can still make a living without those tests passed. But it's something that I am working toward and trying to strive for. So hopefully in 2023, we'll see.
It's making me think about one of the books that I've read recently is John Acuff's Overcoming Overthinking. Well, it's
Oh,
called Soundtracks.
that sounds
John
great.
Acuff's Soundtracks, Overcoming Overthinking. He talks about the things that we play in our mind. He talks about retiring old soundtracks and replacing them with new soundtracks. And so I have a
I
couple
love
of them
that.
up on my wall, and one of them for because this last about 2 years has been really growing my business, and it's been messy, and
Yes.
lots of moments of self-doubt, and overcoming perfectionism has been one of the biggest
Mm,
things that I've been working on.
amen.
Is and this podcast has been a huge piece of that, of just getting it out there, even if it's not going to be perfect, and just getting the thoughts out there. And there's been so much joy from these conversations that wouldn't have happened if I didn't get started. But one of
Sure.
the soundtracks is Momentum is Messy. And
Oh, I love that.
I like that because it's owning that it's hard, it's messy, it doesn't always go the way we think, but that is momentum and what it can look like. So that's when I keep in the forefront. And I think, just watching you and being your friend alongside, especially in that initial transition, I'm so proud of you and,
Oh,
putting
thank
in
you. Well, right back at
the
you.
effort. Yeah.
It's been a ride. Well, and that makes me think of something that somebody says in our general office is, and I said, this is going to be my mantra this year, is it goes along with momentum is messy. Learning how to survive long enough to figure it out. And I feel like in this job and in this business, and I mean, even in life, right? Just learning how to survive day in and day out long enough to figure it out. Now, with life, we may not ever figure it out until we're 6 feet under. I don't know. But that's what I strive for is just like one foot in front of the other, day in, day out, just trying to stick with it because as you do, you learn as you go, you learn as you do more. So, just again, learning how to survive long enough to figure it out,
Mm,
just sticking with it.
yeah.
And
And
that's
I
the
think,
momentum. That's just continuing to go and not stop.
yeah, I think that learning to survive long enough to figure it out is one of those things that I think people get that at different times, and I wish I had
Sure.
understood that earlier on. I might have tried more things if I had realized, you don't have to know it all to do
Right.
it. And in fact, those people that you see doing it don't know it all either. Like that's been the most freeing
Amen.
thing to me to realize everybody is just trying to figure it out. Everybody's continuing to learn.
Absolutely.
And I think that part of this too is our moment in time where information is so commoditized. Like you can Google just about anything and get information at your fingertips. And so
Right.
we don't need to have everything necessarily memorized. We need to be able to think critically and figure it out and say, hey, I don't know the answer to that, but let me find out for you. Or let
Right.
me bring on help from my team to support you.
That is what, and you may even, I'm sure you can understand this, but that's what we struggle with our 9-year old is like, your job right now is to be a student. Your job right now is not to have everything figured out. Your dad and I don't have everything figured out. And so that's been a cool component of my kids seeing me have some struggles with starting a new career and not always knowing what I'm doing or filling in those gaps of like, okay, well, I feel like I'm good here, but I need to work on this. And yeah, it's just one foot in front of the other. And then in calling on your help, because there's always going to be somebody that knows and understands it better, and then somebody that you can always teach it to. So just knowing to call in the troops whenever you need that help and assistance. And I have definitely started doing that a lot more. And I'm very grateful for the help and assistance that I receive because we're not meant to do it alone, that's for sure.
Remember, Tina, when you were in living in the camper, when
Uh-huh.
y'all were building on the land and y'all had
Mm-hmm.
your family of four in a camper
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
2 years?
Almost. Yep.
Almost 2 years. And in the background, when we were talking, was this this giant, like the
It's
size
an eagle.
of my head, eagle trophy. And I was like, Tina, didn't you just start a totally new career and you already have like this bronze eagle situation behind you? So tell us about the
That
eagle.
surprised me as much as it surprised you. Well, because when I was first new several months in, I mean, there was a lot of stuff thrown at you. Things to keep up with, trainings to keep up with, meetings to book, and people to call, and you got to be here and there and everywhere. And it was for setting up and having meetings and closing cases with a certain amount of people that was like it was part of the criteria, I guess, for the award. And the funny thing about it is I didn't really know that I was close to that. I just put my head down and I got to work, and then I looked up and I think somebody was like, well, you're like one or two away from getting this award. And I was like, what? In such a short amount of time. I love it.
Well, that's so amazing. Let's talk more about. I had a similar transition longer ago, but when I went from the classroom to
Yes.
a role in which I make my own schedule. And so now for about 12 years, I've made my own schedule, and I still have these moments where I'm like, it is X o'clock. I can decide what I do with my time because I'm an entrepreneur. And that might mean
Right.
sometimes I'm working after the kids go to sleep and I get back online.
Mhm.
But that also means I could stop at 12 o'clock on Friday and that would be just
Right.
fine too. And so I'm curious, this is a selfish question because I'm always trying to learn this. What have you figured out in your transition to making your own schedule, managing your own productivity that has been really helpful for you?
Oh, I'm still learning. We did have a training last year on coming up with your what's mandatory and like non-negotiable in your life. And a lot of that for me is Scott and the kids and time with them. I love that I am able to take the kids to school and for the most part pick them up every day. I'm an independent soul like that, so I don't always want to depend on a lot of people to have to do that for me. Um, so just making sure that those times of my day are blocked off to be able to do that and enjoy that time with them since we're apart all day long. Just trying to figure out the whole dynamic of that working mom thing. And I've, like I said, since I was always on more of a school schedule with them, that was never a deal. But I mean, mom guilt, it's a real thing, right? So just always feeling like I'm trying my best to be around even after they get home to help with homework. When you're first new in a business and trying to gain that exposure and experience, I mean, sometimes things you just are out of your hands. If somebody is able to meet at 5, you meet at 5.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm allowing myself, since we did have that training on getting your calendar a little bit more streamlined, that being fair to that time that I'm able to kind of check out and be a mom and a wife. I wish I could say I was somebody that was really good at getting up early and getting my day started prior, so I didn't feel like I was struggling when the alarm's going off, but that's not me. Maybe it will be me in a couple more years. I mean, I gotta give and take here and there, and
That's not for everybody, getting
it's
up at
not. I
crazy
thought it used
hour.
to be, but it's not.
Yeah, that was actually something that I used to do, try to get so much done really first thing.
Early.
And I
Mhm.
I love productivity. I'm a little bit obsessed
Amen.
with productivity and read all of
Yes.
those books. But when I had my second son, that was really a transition period for me where I needed to let go of the like 5 a.m. get up and try to get everything done because there was a baby and
Yeah,
there
of
was different
course.
reason for getting up at 5. And really, even ever since then, it's one of those areas where I do give myself a little bit more compassion is in my morning routine and getting up and trying to, I too try to take the kids when I can if I don't have early morning meetings. And so that's kind of our transition and then get started after that. And then that means that sometimes I do need to go later into the evening and
Yes.
that trade off there. The other thing that I often talk about with my friends who are new moms or in a different season of parenting when it transitions from like diapers to elementary school or preschool and things like that is that your schedule can be for a season. And
That's
so
exactly what I was about to jump in and
yeah.
say, because
Yeah.
my kids are at a point now where, I mean, there's still some things that I do for them, like I'm still making lunches because they're gonna pack not good stuff, but in the morning, it's like I think I did tell our son the other day, "I need your help. You can make a bowl of cereal as quick as I can, and I could be doing something else, getting myself ready." So as they become a little bit more, independent and self-sufficient, and that's a season. And it's funny because would this kind of work suited me several years ago? Who knows? I'm sure we could have worked it out, but it just, you look back and you're like, "Well, it was really good that we lived in an RV when there weren't toddlers.
Yeah.
It's really good that they can be self sufficient and find something to do. If I say I've got to be on a meeting for an hour, you cannot have my attention right now. So that yes, it all comes in seasons, and that's very helpful. And
One of the other sentence stems that I find brings up some fun conversation is
oh gosh,
in your business or in your industry, what are some of the things that people overcomplicate? I bet there are some listeners that are in a similar meeting with people and having a sales side to their job, like meeting and closing a deal ultimately. And
hmm
so from your perspective, if only people knew when it comes to selling or with meeting with people, if only people knew what comes to
I
you?
I would say authenticity, just being real and being yourself and building that relationship on that alone is what matters. Because we all know that we've been around people, salesy people, or people that want our attention, and we're just like, oh gosh, again. I mean, guilty, but just being yourself and being real and being who they know and love. Now, if it's somebody that you haven't met, that causes for a little bit of um, a hurdle. Not that you can't get over it, but that's where I feel like my strength. And maybe Tracy, it's because it does come a little bit too easily for me. I feel like so it's easy for me to say that, and some listeners might be like that. Well, that's not me, but just staying true to who you are and being real and allowing that to take shape to build a relationship is what first comes to mind for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I think that this idea of authenticity is so vital for building trust, of course, and so much of
Yes,
sales is
100%.
rooted in trust, and in particular, your industry of sales is rooted in trust and, finances and insurance, you want to
Absolutely.
understand what the options are and what the costs are, what the benefits are, and there's so many options out there in that
And
industry is like
yeah,
this differentiation of, okay, what sets your company apart, or how do I know that, okay, if you were a new relationship for me, how do I know that you have my best interests in mind and you will tell me what you really think? I think that that's part of the authenticity that I've experienced on kind of both ends of that business and sales side.
yep.
And so I don't know if you've seen any of that, if that brings up any other thoughts.
It brings up one. I know that I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, whether you know me personally and then we try to transition into business, or you don't know me from somebody off the street. If I'm being true to myself and being the real Tina for everybody around me, some are going to love that and some may not, and that's okay. We just move on.
Yeah, I think there's something there. Well, first of all, I couldn't let this pass by. While you think you may not be everybody's cup of tea, I have not met anybody for whom Tina isn't their cup of tea, at least where we
That's
live.
very sweet.
And so
I have a lot of energy and I like to talk a lot and I'm loud. That may
it's
not be
usually
for
like,
everybody.
I know Tina, comma, or exclamation mark. I love her, exclamation mark.
Oh my
That's
gosh, you're
that's
so
what
sweet.
usually follows.
Thank you. You're sweet.
I want to build on this idea still of sales and authenticity because there was something else there. Staying true to who you are and helping others. Okay, I think this is what it is. So, what I've found in entrepreneurship, a lot of people say if you help enough people, you'll never have to worry about money. I don't know if it's Zig Ziglar or somebody like that originally said
Sounds right.
that.
Sure. We'll
But
go with it.
but I think that there's something really beautiful about that because I'm driven in my work by impact. I want to help humans flourish, and I like to do that
Mhm.
through learning design and
Yes.
facilitation and consulting and all that stuff. And so when I am talking with somebody about a new project, basically at the point that somebody tells me a potential project exists, I can't stop thinking about it. I'll like design it in my head even if I'm not hired yet. And so
Dang, girl, that's awesome.
what I started to realize is that the root of that is that impact, is that desire to help and serve. And I think that when people that are in sales roles, whatever that looks like, because everybody in some
Mhm.
ways in sales with like the
Sure.
way even personal branding is and things like that. And I used to have kind of maybe even a negative connotation around it because I didn't like some of the ways I had seen it done. And so I
Mhm.
couldn't see myself in sales because of what I thought it was until I realized, it depends on what you're selling and it depends on what your rationale is for it. So I think where I'm trying to get here is I think there's something that is important in a sales role that is kind of centering on the why of why you're selling and trying to shift as much as possible out of any sort of scarcity mindset that's really focused on just like the funds. Although I know that can be challenging as someone who's
Sure.
been in places where there's been moments of financial challenge
Oh
to
yeah.
shift as much as possible into the how can I help and serve, even if that means I'm not the right fit, even if that means my
Mm.
product is not the right fit, but I can help somebody get to the right product, the right service, the right person. So I don't know if there's anything there, but I think that I'm just continuing to learn that is so true. Being driven first by impact and service seems to
Well,
allow
and just educating
freedom.
people. I've had several meetings lately where some people were like, "Ooh, I didn't know that," or "Ooh, we don't have that." And just allowing others, and I always like to joke that I have been an elementary school teacher, so hopefully I'm explaining things to other people very elementary. Not that everybody needs to be that audience, but it's my hope and wish that it comes out the right way and easily understood, making sure that people feel educated and walk away from a meeting with me knowing something maybe that they didn't already know. And then if you never do work with me again, I've given you a bit of information and hopefully that's been helpful and will carry you into maybe something else that is better suited for you. But again, not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Not, it's not going to always work out. And that's just, I know that's the nature of the business and that's okay. But if I know that I can give you a little bit of information that maybe you didn't know prior, then I'm doing my job for sure.
Yeah, that's just making me think for a moment from the learning perspective. There is something huge to the ability to take complex concepts, like insurance and finances and all that, and make it simple for people. I think that is really needed in that industry because you can get to some people that really know it really deeply and well, and they have
Oh my
known it for
gosh.
so long
Yes.
that they think everybody else does. So maybe one of this could be another mantra or soundtrack that comes, but your newness to this work is actually a strength because you
Yes.
have fresh eyes as a new learner to see in ways that may be able to help communicate to your clients, you know,
Absolutely.
those things that you have learned.
Yes, that is so true. And everybody that comes into this position comes from different walks of life, areas of expertise, and so I do think that you're spot on there. Is that just being new and learning things as I go, and being able to share that with others, and having fresh eyes to understand. And I did have somebody say the other day, she was like, "Did you know all this stuff before you started this job?" And I was like, "No, I've had to learn it." And because she was like, "I had 0 clue." And I said, "Well, you and me both, but I've learned and now I'm here to educate you." So yeah, you were spot on with that for sure.
So, one of the things I'd love to hit on is leadership. You referenced, I think you call him the managing partner that brings y'all together.
Mhm.
What would you say as somebody who's on a team in which you have a leader, that you report to? What would
Yes.
you say to the leaders that are listening? We have some overlap into organizational development work and things like that.
Mhm. Just positivity, being available. I know that's not always easy. Finding your team members' strengths and weaknesses, goal setting with them, being somebody who is naturally easy to talk to and approachable, and somebody that's fun and keeps it real and not always deep and serious all the time. I'm honestly talking about who leads our team. She's fantastic and knows her stuff. And yeah, just those characteristics.
Yeah.
Somebody who definitely and is organized and motivated, because that helps keep all of us organized and motivated for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. Is there anything in the goal setting piece that you found to be particularly motivating or helpful in that process that you want to expand on?
I mean, this is a little embarrassing to say, but I'm not a natural goal setter. I just kind of, I don't know. Not always a resolution person at the beginning of a year. And so even just being in this role and having somebody who says putting it pen to paper, being able to mark things off or check things, tangibly speaking, and knowing that if you don't have something like that, what are you working toward? You know what I mean? What's the carrot in front of your face? And that's been really cool too, because honestly haven't done it this year, and we're almost to month 2 of 2023. But we did that when I first started this position. We did it as a family, sat down and had some goals, wrote them out, and it was fun to include the kids. And I had our daughter, who is going to be 12 in May. She wrote down, we just get out a piece of paper, write them down, and we're going to put them on the refrigerator, and we're
Mm.
going to be able to. And we had big ones because we needed to build a house. And mama wanted a new car. And I needed a new cell phone because I needed it for work. I needed one that was going to be dependable and working. And so just things like that, engaging them and being able to do that as a family was really cool. And I mean, I will say they all got marked off. and then
You
some.
met them
And now
all.
and now we need to work on some new goals. So, having a leader that helps hold me accountable to that as well, because I'm not always good at that.
This is one that maybe does come a little bit naturally, or maybe it was originally forced somewhere back in my childhood and upbringing, not by my parents, but by the culture that I grew up in kind of an intense
Mhm.
college preparatory education environment from kindergarten through 12th grade. But goals were important and big, and
Yes.
productivity was important. And so more of what I've had to undo is the perfectionism side that
Oh,
that
yeah.
can produce. However, the goal setting side has been really powerful to me also because I love digging into the research around it, like why goal setting really works for humans and for students and for adults and all that. One of the things that's so important is being able to kind of progress monitor, like how are you
Mhm.
doing towards it. That's sometimes the missing piece is we write down the goals and then what
Yes.
are those steps to monitor.
I would be very intrigued to find out the research behind that, because I feel like when you were talking, my brain was telling me, well, that's why you don't like to write down and make goals, is because it's a prideful thing that if you don't achieve it, well, then I failed, right? Like, so that's just one of those
Right.
things that maybe in the back of my brain subconsciously is why I don't do it.
Well, yeah,
I
I
love a
mean,
good list.
yeah, and it can be, okay, what are, so here's the goal. Yes, you either make it or don't. However, what's the progress that you made towards that goal and measuring that as a part of the
And what
success?
measurements need to be worked on to then reach that goal another time or again or whatever. Yes.
Right. And so the goal and the data is not a hammer to say you're, not cutting it or something like that. It's more to say, well, because remember, you have the eagle. So if you ever doubt, just look back at the
Just
eagle.
look at that. Look
Just
at that guy.
be like,
Looks like
I
he's about to
soared.
soar away on my desk.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Or
is
listen to
hilarious to me.
that Shakira song from Zootopia. That one's really good. Try Everything. That one has some very
Yes.
motivational message in there. I do that for myself sometimes too. I write my list for the top 3 things that need to be so it doesn't
Mhm.
become the top 50 things. The top
Amen.
3
Yeah.
things that happen. Actually, I'll show you all the little pad for our video people. So this top 3 list. And so
Nice.
I do that the night before so that the next day, those are the main things. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, things change and shift and other things
Of
come in,
course.
but
So
it,
do you do that? Will you do one every night for the
yes.
next day?
Yes.
Awesome.
And that does help me also to I struggle sometimes with leaving work at work and then going
Sure.
on to
Oh,
back
yeah.
to mom life and all those things. And so writing that down too before I leave my office,
Hmm.
writing that down is helpful to say, I know what tomorrow holds and that I know what appointments I have and
Yes.
all that
I
and
love
those
that.
top things. So I don't know if that's
I
helpful.
think that's great. That's something I might need to implement, because 3 is doable, and especially if you even think about ranking them about what of most importance or whatever need to get
Right.
done.
And this may have connected to what you were saying earlier about the training that you went to. There's a difference between what is urgent and what is important. And something that happens a lot of times, especially when we make our own schedule, is you get another email and you get another
Oh,
call or you get something
man.
in and it
Yes.
never ends, right? And that
Yes.
feels urgent because you're getting
Yes.
these pings and these responses. But if you do set what are the top 3 ahead of time, then that's what's important to you. And it might be that something comes in and it is urgent and
Of
important.
course.
But other
Yeah.
times, I think we have to retrain our brain from all of these like social media inputs and technology inputs to say that ping is not important in this moment in time when I'm working on, deep focus.
That's a great thing to remember, because I tend to be thinking everything is urgent and everything is important, and that's where I have to just dial back, give myself some grace. I cannot do it all. I cannot attend all the trainings, get to all the emails, da 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 da. And then again, whether it be my work email and then 500 personal emails about school and practices, and oh my goodness. So that would be something to remember for me. That's a great practice that you've just now put in my brain, is it urgent or is it important?
Mhm.
And there will be times that they're both.
Yeah.
Um, but just to make kind of a priority list there.
Yeah.
I like
And
that. Thank you for sharing
sometimes
that for
along with
sure.
that, I have my own sentence stem to say for when I know I can't take on something, but it's important to that person who's asking, I might say
Mhm.
something like, I do not currently have the time and capacity to give that the attention it deserves. Like,
Yeah.
I hear for you that's urgent and important. And if it's a client, for example, I might say something like, these are the things on my priority list based on the
Mhm.
projects that we're working on. What would you like me to move so that I can reprioritize in the event that there is something new? Because this work dynamically changes. Let's hit on, what are you most looking forward to in the future that you see ahead?
Just feeling more confident in my line of work, feeling like I'm getting it a little bit better, whether that be the mix of work and personal life, or understanding concepts and different things, and just getting settled in our house. I mean, we've only been in there for just about 2 months, and enjoying that life, and it's something that we've all worked so hard toward. Um, and so just I would say within this year, just becoming more confident in a better version of myself, speaking, hopefully financially speaking, spiritually speaking, emotionally, being a better mom and wife. I mean, all the cliche things it sounds like, but it's true. It's totally true.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, beautiful to hear so many of those goals that you set that Hattie and y'all put on the
And
refrigerator,
that's sweet. We
came
have got
to
to get on that.
be.
Maybe you need to hold me accountable.
Tina, so at the end of our episodes, we do recommendations. So this can be any book recommendations, any podcast recommendations, anything that you want listeners to know.
Of course, digging into the Bible more. That's always something that I strive to do. I'm looking forward to starting a new Bible study. So that's definitely a book of choice. Another one is A Modern Appointment Setting. It's something that sounds like it comes so easy to me, but that's just a great book that gives you bits and pieces and tips on what works these days. Podcast, I'm really embarrassed to say I don't listen to a whole lot. Sometimes the ones from our church. I will say there is one that always ends up on a road trip with me and Scott, and it's Mike Rowe. How I heard it. Is
The
that what I
way
wrote it
I
down?
heard
The
it.
way the way I heard it. Phenomenal. First of all, he cracks me up. Second of all, we have learned so much about just random people. Bob Ross, for example, the painter. Incredible story. Just phenomenal things in these people, in these adventures. So that always ends up
I
one
love
that we
it.
listen to as a couple on our road trips, and
Oh, I
it's
love
fun.
it. Is there anything that you want people to reach out to you about?
If there's been a little bit of a light bulb moment, or maybe I need to know a little bit more about what she's talking about, I'm up for coffee, I'm up for lunch, I'm up for educating you on finances and insurance. I'm up just to meet you and get to know you a little bit better. Um, and so whatever that looks like, whether you want a friend or a financial resource person,
Ah,
I'm your girl.
okay, I love it. Tina, thank you so much for your time, for your friendship, for
Oh,
connecting.
Tracy,
And
thank you.
thanks so much for listening to the Building Thinkers podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a podcast rating and review. That helps more listeners find us in the world of podcasting algorithms. You can find out more about my learning and development strategy services at buildingthinkers.com. And remember, there's no limit to what you can learn.